So, in the introduction, I talked very briefly about the way that the Cylons on the show are a way of mediating all discourses about difference. So, given that and last week's excellent discussion about Cylons as archive and all that that entails, I thought that this would be an appropriate time to hit you with some material from Donna Haraway's classic essay, Manifesto for Cyborgs. This essay, which was written in 1984, is one of my all-time favorites, and it certainly provides the theoretical heritage of a lot of the ways that I interpret Cylon Runner and, other sci-fi cyborgs, and, of course, cyborgs in real life. So, to read you some choice quotations from this essay, special guest, the alien. The alien says, a cyborg is a cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine and organism, a creature of social reality as well as a creature of fiction. The boundary between science fiction and social reality is an optical illusion. I, meaning Donna Haraway, but also me and the alien, am making an argument for the cyborg as a fiction mapping our social and bodily reality and as an imaginative resource suggesting some very fruitful couplings. We are cyborgs. The cyborg is our ontology. It gives us our politics. The relation between organism and machine has been a border war. The stakes in the border war have been the territories of production, reproduction, and imagination. This essay is an argument for pleasure in the confusion of boundaries and for responsibility in their construction. The cyborg is a creature in a post-gender world. The cyborg has no origin story in the Western sense. The cyborg is resolutely committed to partiality, irony, intimacy, and perversity. It is oppositional, utopian, and completely without innocence. No longer structured by the polarity of public and private. The relationships for forming wholes from parts, including those of polarity and hierarchical domination, are at issue in the cyborg world. Cyborgs, of course, is that they are the illegitimate offspring of militarism and patriarchal capitalism, not to mention state socialism. But illegitimate offspring are often exceedingly unfaithful to their origins. So my cyborg myth is about transgressed boundaries, potent fusions, and dangerous possibilities, which progressive people might explore as part of needed political work. From one perspective, a cyborg world is about the final imposition of a grid of control on the planet. From another perspective, a cyborg world might be about lived social and bodily realities, in which people are not afraid. The political struggle is to see from both perspectives at once, because each reveals both dominations and possibilities unimaginable from the other vantage point. Any objects or persons can be reasonably thought of in terms of disassembly and reassembly. No natural architectures constrain system design. So I do think this is fantastically resonant with Battlestar Galactica and its cyborgs. And so on that note, let's go watch the show and see what happens as a continuation of last week's episode. All right, Buttercup, pay attention to the vlog.
How scary she is.
Yeah. Buttercup is very scary.
I'm still terrified of her.
Like
Bring her over here so we can see how mad she is.
When she's mad.
Dun dun dun. She's very mad. Buttercup is totally the scariest Powerpuff Girl. Also, she's the lesbian Powerpuff Girl, just for the record. Despite the absence of Tori, we did see some really wonderful Evil Roslyn moments. And as you know, I love Evil Roslyn. Now, as I was watching this episode, I was trying to sort of unpack why I love Evil Roslyn so much, just beyond the fact that female villains are hot. But I think what's interesting about Roslyn is the amount of moral complexity she has as a character, as I've said before. And sort of this is a perfect example of her doing a terrible, indefensible thing for a very lofty reason.
I concur, actually. I mean, this is perhaps some of the best evidence for your theory of Evil Roslyn that we've come across yet.
Yeah. genocide, pretty bad thing to do.
Yes.
We all agree.
As
We don't like
everyone within the
genocide.
show pretty much acknowledged. And I think, Rosalind has proved herself to be amply willing to sort of sell her human soul in exchange for the survival of the species. And for some reason, I find that to be extremely hot. Although it would have been hotter if Tori was there to witness it.
Wow.
So, genocide. One of the reasons I call this episode old school is because it seems to be returning to a very binary notion of the difference between humans and Cylons. And certainly, genocide in the form of a biological weapon, which, can infect one species and not the other, is the ultimate form of binarization of these two races. Because in order to have genocide, you have to be able to make this absolute distinction between us and them, which in some ways is an idea that I feel like the show has moved beyond recently.
But I feel like that's probably been taken away simply by the discussion of, why are you tickling me? Stop it! Stop it!
Sorry, finish what you were saying, Jellybean. Jellybean doesn't giggle, I don't think.
Anyway. After this rude...
That's what you get for attacking me whenever I talk about girl/goggles.
After
You
this,
evil non-lesbian bunny.
After this rude interruption, we can go on to discuss how this was in fact complexified. Rooting my shot. Rooting...
Yes? What was complexified, Jellybean?
with, like, Athena and Hilo.
Yes.
That made it much more complex.
I think
Yes. Would you like to say something about that, Draco?
So too. Yes.
You Pinocchio
I was thinking the same thing
okay.
actually. That even though maybe in the discussion, when they were trying to decide what to do, there was this binary of us against them. But then when we find out that Athena, I guess now, was saved because of the pregnancy, that kind of broke it down. And also the conversation between her and Hilo, where Hilo is the one who sort of says this is wrong and we can't do it. And she says, well, I've made this choice and I need to stand by this choice and I can't do anything that allows anyone to question my status in this fleet. And so she basically takes up what we could call the classic human position, and he takes up sort of the position for the Cylons. Although I don't know if really Battlestar Galactica has ever drawn such a sharp distinction between humans and Cylons. I think from the beginning the show has really blurred their boundary.
Yeah, but it seems strangely unblurred in this episode, is
Well,
what
I
I'm
think-
saying.
I don't think so.
But one of the things that I think is really interesting is, right, as you point out quite rightly, there is this sort of essential distinction with the notion of, like, biology, right? The virus affects one race but not the other. But you also have the blurring of the boundary again with Athena because of the fact that there was the hybrid child,
Yeah.
which you should be all over.
I'm totally all over it. And one problem I do have with Evil Roslyn is that, as I've been saying all along, it bothers me that the change of her perspective and her position after her miracle cancer cure was never dealt with. And I do feel like, given her connection to the hybrid baby and, very explicitly in this episode, her connection to Boomer, or now Athena, that we should see the results of that, or at least her struggling with that, in the way that she views the Cylons. And I don't think we saw that in this episode when she was sort of taking the extreme anti-Cylon position, which was very us versus them.
But I think maybe we get a tiny little glimpse of it when she sort of chastises Hilo for, for taking such a strong position defending the Cylons. And especially when he says, well, but the Cylons tried to live with us on New Caprica, and she says, well, but you weren't there. And you don't know what we have all been through. And I think maybe that was at least a glimpse of the explanation of why she has the strong position.
Yes, that's true. The sort of lingering trauma of New Caprica.